All right, good morning. Welcome back, everyone. So we got Leechburg and Kennett, right? All right. So welcome back. Before we begin, how did we do with our boards yesterday that we created? Oh, looking good. Yeah, I like that one. How about you guys, Kennett? All right, super. Okay, awesome. Thank you, guys. So it looks like we're ready to go for the next step. So, adults, if this is okay with you, a little change of plans. I was going to start 3D design tomorrow, but and do coding today. But thinking about it, it might make more sense to start our 3D design today and then do the coding tomorrow. Just because with the coding, you're going to have some groups that might finish real quick and some groups that might need more time. And the 3D design is something that we could always come back to and continue working on if you have those groups that finish early. So if it's okay with everyone, we can start 3D design. Is that okay? All right, awesome. So how this will work today, we're going to dive right in. Kids in the room, I'm going to start you out with an assignment, something for you to work on. You're going to have to start planning your 3D designs, getting measurements, things like that. While you're doing that, I want to if I can take the adults aside, and we're going to set up an easy way to kind of share our 3D designs and hopefully get everything printed. Okay. So that's how we're going to start. And then once we do that, we're going to hop onto an app called Tinkercad. It's an app. It's also a website too. Just show of hands out of curiosity. Has anyone used Tinkercad before? Okay. All of Leechburg has. That's awesome. How about Kenneth? Have you guys used Tinkercad at all? No? Okay. All right. So this would be great.
I have used it, but none of our students have.
Gotcha. Okay. Leechburg, the kids, do you guys have accounts for Tinkercad? Any chance? Okay, cool. All right. So again, kind of 3 parts today. Kids, you're going to get an assignment right off the bat. You're going to have to plan out your 3D designs. And then after that, while you're planning, I'm going to pull the adults aside and we're going to set up classrooms in Tinkercad, make it easy way for you to submit your design so we can get those printed for you. Okay. Then after that, the rest of the time is going to be on Tinkercad, actually 3D designing, and hopefully we can get some prints out today. Okay. And then tomorrow is coding. All right. So here you go. So kids, here is your assignment that I want you to start with. So bear with me. I'm going to switch to my iPad here. So I'm going to have to stand up a bit. All right, so hopefully you can see my screen here. It's not lagging too much. Okay. So I'm going to bring back my sample project. And let's talk briefly about the things that we can 3D print, 3D design. Ken, are you guys okay?
Like the frame rate is really low from your iPad camera.
Okay.
I think that's what it is. I'm not sure if that's something you can fix, but
here's what I'm going to do. If you can give me a minute, I'm actually going to, because I kind of ran into an issue with hooking my iPad up to my Mac. So I'm going to actually.
Looks like it partially resolved itself. Actually, I think you might be okay.
I'm okay now. Okay, if it happens again, let me know, because I'm connected with 2 devices, so I can jump off with one and just be on my iPad if I need to. All right, thanks. All right, so let's talk about here. some of the things that you're going to have to 3D design and 3D print, or you may want to 3D design and 3D print. Right off the bat, it's important to note, you don't have to 3D print everything, right? And 3D printing tends to take a lot of time. We have to wait for the printer, things like that. So by the end of the week, you might not print everything that you want to. That's okay. You could actually get away with not 3D printing anything at all, but that's not fun. We want to kind of explore the printers, explore some 3D design too as well. Okay, so looking at my thing, probably the first thing, and from talking about your designs and your themes yesterday, it sounds like all of you want to 3D print paddles here, right? So that's the first thing that we're going to be designing and printing if you want to 3D print paddles. Now, if you wanted to, you can make these out of cardboard, but it seems like most groups want to 3D print these, right? And 3D design them. Okay, so let's talk about how I did my paddles first. I mean, there's multiple ways that you could design this, but how I did, I'm going to take a paddle off here to show you. Yeah, I do see some lag with the screen, so bear with me. If it gets too bad, just let me know. Okay, so this is a paddle that I designed and I printed. Okay, so very basic. You can keep yours kind of basic like mine, that's fine. Or I know from talking to some of you yesterday, you wanted to incorporate your theme into the paddle. Like I know we had one kid that was doing a camping theme and he wanted to make his paddle like logs. I think in the second group I did, not in this class, but one group was doing a baseball theme and they wanted their paddles to be baseball bats. Okay, so you could incorporate your theme into your paddle if you want, or not. You can just make a basic paddle, kind of like what I did. It's whatever you want to do. Okay, so how I made mine, right? Basically, what's really important, and right off the bat, as you're designing and planning, one thing that you want to have with you at all times is going to be a ruler. Okay, so I made sure to measure everything. So my paddle is 5 inches long. Okay, I made mine. It is 1/4 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch thick, 1/4 of an inch tall here. Okay, and then I put in the middle, I put a cylinder with a hole in it. Okay, and that fastens it to my board, and I'm using a brass fastener. Okay, to attach it to my board, and that way it's mobile. It can swing back and forth. Okay. One thing I want, because I could tell there might be some kids that want to do this, but in your hummingbird kits, you do have some different servos, some different motors that you can use, like the position servo. I would not recommend using these with the paddles. I kind of tested this out. I wanted to make my paddle move electronically with the motor. These just did not generate enough power to move the marble enough. So I made these hand powered just because the servos were not powerful enough. Okay. All right. So then the last thing I put in my paddle design, which you might want to consider as well, is here at the end, I kind of have a tab. Since this is hand powered, I wanted to make sure that I had an area that I could grab onto so that I can move the paddle. Okay. So that's how I did my paddle. You could do something similar. You can incorporate your theme in it. My recommendation would be, there's a few different ways that you could create the paddle. But I would recommend this way. This way is pretty simple and works pretty well, and using the brass fastener. Okay. So that's one thing I had to design. That's probably the first thing that we're going to be 3D designing here today. The other thing, the other components and things to think about that you can 3D print, 3D design would be, some of your obstacles, right? So we did toadstool up here, and that's just giving objects for the marble to bounce off of, or maybe to make your board a little bit more challenging, a little bit more difficult, right? I designed the star up here that attaches to the motor. This way, when it's gravity fed, this spins in random directions, and it's going to kick the marble one way or the other. The other thing that I could have 3D designed, now we did a cardboard design with this one, was the coin, but this could have been 3D designed and 3D printed if I wanted it to. Okay. The other thing I could have 3D designed and printed was my piranha plant here, right? So this is catching the marble if it falls through the paddles, and there's a light sensor in here that detects any balls that are dropped. Okay, but this could have been 3D designed. Now I chose to design it in cardboard instead. Okay, so keep that in mind. Like with your board, you're probably going to have a mix of like cardboard traditional designs with 3D printed designs as well. Okay, so you can have a mix of it. You can have it all 3D printed if you have time to do that. If not, but at the very least, let's get some 3D design paddles in here. Okay, so kids, your assignment that I'm going to have you do. Okay, you're going to need a couple things here. You're going to need a pencil. You're going to need a ruler. Okay, and as we 3D designs, make sure you have a ruler handy at all times. And then I want you to have some paper as well. And what you're going to do now, while I have the adults aside, is I'm going to have you plan out your different designs that you want, starting with the paddles. Okay, and I have a sample here of one that I did when I planned out my paddles. Okay, so I did two different views of my paddles. One was a side view, and then one was a bird's eye view. Okay, so very important when you plan this out. Now, I actually tried to, and I used my ruler and I used it as a straight edge, and I measured, and I tried to have, when I drew this out, I tried to have my dimensions as accurate as possible. Okay, so for instance, when I planned out the length of my paddle, I kind of had to look at my ruler and be like, well, how long should this be? And I put that ruler up on my board too. Is that paddle going to take up too much space? Is there going to be a gap between the two paddles? Okay, because you want to add some challenge there. You want the marble to have an opportunity to fall through. Am I going to have enough room to maneuver it and to swing the paddle back and forth? Okay, so these are things that you have to think about, right? And then when you plan this out on paper, okay, it's kind of like you're making a blueprint, right? So I kind of made notes like, okay, the whole thing's going to be 5 inches long. It's going to be 1/4 of an inch tall. Okay. And I always have my ruler there so I can see like, well, how tall is that? What does that look like? For the finger tab, what I'm grabbing onto with the paddle, I made that 3/4 of an inch tall. And again, I used my ruler just to see how tall that would be. Okay. And I made that tab an inch long. Okay. For my bird's eye view, this is where you can see like where I put that hole and that cylinder. Okay, so I want the radius of that cylinder to be 1 inch, and then the radius of the hole where the brass fastener goes in, I want that to be, I wanted that to be 1/4 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch. Okay. Not only did I like the overall length of my paddle, which I made 5 inches, but like I broke it down into segments, right? Because I had that hole in the middle. Okay, so on the end that's hitting the marble, okay, that's 3 inches long, and then the end that I'm grabbing onto that has the ball, that's going to be 2 inches. So I even like broke it down a little bit more like that. Okay. So that's how I plan the paddle. So plan your paddle, just make notes of, you know, these can be rough sketches if you want. You can make them very accurate, but do make notes. How big do you want things? What kind of dimensions do you want? How long do you want the paddle to be? How high is it going to be? How wide is it going to be? Things like that. Because when we get into our 3D design space, when we get into Tinkercad, you're going to need to know that. Okay, so measurements are going to be pretty important here. Okay. So right now, kids, are you guys okay with that? You have rulers, pencils, everything else? Okay. So I want you guys to start sketching out. Start with your paddles. And then if you have time, you can start planning out some of the other obstacles and things that you want in it. And then adults, if you want to come over, we can kind of set up a way that we can share these 3D files so that you can print them. All right. Hi, Max. Hi, Patty.
Hi. Yeah.
All right. So let me share my screen here. So looking at this, I think the best way to go about this is for you guys to create. So there's a feature in Tinkercad where you can create a class and you can add students and just give them a nickname. And basically when the kids go into Tinkercad, they're just going to join the class. They'll enter a code for the class, and then they put in their nickname, and then they're in. And then kind of in that space, they can create their 3D designs, and then you have access to those designs right away, and you can just download them and then put them in your slicer. Are you your 3D printers are all set up, ready to go?
We have the P1S set up. We also have our other printers that we can use, so we have plenty of capacity.
Yeah. I mean, I think this would be the easiest thing to do. I mean, if I'll leave it up to you though, like, and you can give me some feedback. Like if you wanted the kids to actually go on and slice and print, you could, or you could just have
Done that
them.
with some of them already, but yeah, we can. We'll get to that.
Okay. So if it's okay, we'll just set it up this way for now, and then if you want to do something different, you can. I'm just thinking like ease of sharing and everything. All right. So let me share my screen. Have you ever set up like and both of you have Tinkercad accounts? Okay. Have you ever set up the classroom before? Okay.
No.
All right. Let me share my screen and I'll kind of walk you through it here. All right. So I'm just on tinkercad.com. If I go to log in, I'm going to do educators. And then I access it with my Google account, so I'm just going to do that. Okay, so once you're signed in, if you go to classes, you can create new class. And then you can name it, I'll name mine like pinball class. You do have to select a grade range. And you can select multiple if you want. Okay. Are you got it? Let me know when you're good so far. Okay. So once you have your class created, so what I would recommend doing here is you can just add students. And then you can put in their name. You don't have to put like a last name in. So you can just put in a first name, but then add a nickname. And you'll need to tell them what their nickname is. Yeah, and basically one by one, just add each kid. I'll give you a minute to do that.
When I go to add students, it pops up this student data and privacy notice, and it's telling me to scroll through and read the whole thing to accept it, but it's not letting me.
So when I got that before, there might be like towards the top, there might be a box to check. But I do remember having to agree to that. I'm pretty sure I checked the box. Did you find it?
No.
Let me see if I can find it. I'll try to log in with a different account.
I'm gonna try opening Tinkercad in a different browser and see if that works.
Okay, Max, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So like here is where I have that box.
That's actually not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing when you go to create a classroom, I'm able to create the classroom and name the group. but then once I go to add students, it shows this notice. I'll let you get there.
Okay.
Even in another browser, this student data and privacy notice is not letting me accept. It's not letting me like read the whole thing.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to get in with a different account so I can. Since I accepted it, it won't, it's not letting me. All right, Patty, I'll help Max out here in a minute. So you're in, have you been able to add students? Patty? You're muted, sorry.
Sorry. I'm having a hard time accessing it to begin with. Like, it's asking me to create an account. When I try to sign in with Google, it's not letting me.
Okay. Are you on an iPad?
Yes.
Okay. Can I see your screen real quick?
Yeah, it's asking me for my pass key, but whenever the pass key, but whenever I try to do it, it's saying it's not supported. Can you see it?
Kind of. Okay. Are you using like a Google account associated with the library?
It's my Google account, but I can use the one associated with the library.
When you have you been in Tinkercad before? Have you logged in before?
I thought I did, but I must not have. So do you think I need to create an account?
Yeah.
Okay.
You
I'm
could
sorry,
try
this
that.
is
Like you can try
mom.
in the login screen, like try join Tinkercad.
Okay.
And then if you do educators,
Yes.
start here. You can
Yeah,
continue.
I went back and did that. So let me try it.
Now try your Google account.
I installed Firefox and that fixed the problem for me.
Okay.
It's saying something went wrong. It makes sure that the Bluetooth is connected or near it.
Bluetooth.
Yeah.
Are you sure you're on tinkercad.com?
Yeah. Yeah, it says in-school educators start here. Students join a class on your own, create a personal account and already have an account, sign in.
Are you going through the app or the website?
The app.
Maybe try the website. So maybe try tinkercad.com.
Okay.
What's the pivot point for? That's like the turning point. It's like, see that I have a thing here, a pedal, and there was no point. I could just slide it. I mean, I could turn it, but like when I would turn it, it could go in, out. It's like that, and it keeps it stable, and that's like the only point it turns. Like that's the only point it turns on.
This is where Booth and are. This is the exit. What, is this the start?
This is the outside. This is outside. This is inside. So 8 centimeters would be inside. and we'd have a 4 centimeter gap. Oh, thank you.
Is the website working any better?
Yeah, I just came up with a welcome to Tinker card.
My. I'm not playing. I don't want to play, so. No, it's not a yes.
My legs are crossed.
It wasn't. It wasn't.
All right, Max, were you able to get all your students added?
I created 4 separate classes because we have 4 groups.
Okay.
So yes.
All right, cool. So basically one thing, I can get Patty caught up, but Max, one thing that you probably want to do is, and this is up to you how you want to organize it, but under activities, I mean, you can make one like activity per class. You could just do pinball 3D designs. And you know, they can create all their designs in that activity, or you can break it down a little bit more. Like you could have an activity for their paddles, an activity for you know, the features. So it's up to you how you want to organize that.
Thank you.
But basically, you know, when you have each group in, you want to share that code where it says class link, there's a code. If you put that on a board,
Got it.
from the student perspective, I can kind of show you that.
I think I've seen that part of it because I accidentally logged in as I started to like join a class,
Yeah.
but I could definitely see a demonstration that would probably be helpful.
Yeah. So from the student perspective, it'll look like this. They'll go up to, they'll go to login, and then they're going to choose students with class code. Then they'll plug in that 6-character code. Go to my class. It'll prompt them to, sure, write my code down, but it'll prompt them to put in their nickname. Well, there's actually 2 options for them to get in. Like one way is they can sign in if they have an account, they can sign in, and the other option that they'll have is to sign in with their nickname.
No, I would just be looking at the yeah. Come on. Yeah, that's why
This is supposed to be strange and that's that's the rule.
Yeah, Max, when they sign in, so I got my class code here, but when they sign in,
Okay, what do you
they
want
could
your,
just join with the nickname
what do you
that
want
you
your
gave
class
them, or if
to
they
be?
want to, if they have their own accounts, they could sign in that way too as well. So like if I do nickname, then they're in, and then they can, create their first design and everything, and you'll have that in your account. So like if you need to slice and print, you just have easy access to their designs.
Thank you.
All right, Patty, how are you doing? Patty, were you able to get your class created and students added? Okay. Were you able to start create an activity?
Hold on, I'm not there yet. Hold on. Do I go back to class?
Here, I can show you. All right, so if I go to my classes, my pinball class, I have my roster, then up here where it says activities,
Okay,
you can create an activity for them. Like what I told Max, it's up to you how you want to organize that. Like if you want like one activity for the paddles, then one,
Okay.
another activity for that you could, or you could just make one and you can have, all designs.
okay.
Then did you see the process for the students logging in?
This is just some musical, so.
So if I hit like paddles, no, students have not added any designs yet.
Yeah. So when the students, if you want to watch, when what you'll need to do for the students in your classes, you can see there's a code here. So it says class link, and then there's like a 6-character code. Like you need to like write that on the board for them or have that up on your screen.
Okay. So hold on. Okay, add students. Okay, I see the class link there. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and it's like a 6-character code. Like if you write that on a board or something, or
Yes.
paper for them. And then when the kids go to log into Tinkercad, here's what it'll look like. So they'll go to log in.
Okay.
They're going to choose students with class code.
Okay.
They're going to type in that those 6 characters.
Okay.
So I have mine here, so I'm just typing mine in right now. And go to my class.
Okay.
Then it's up to them. So you like it sounds like they have their own accounts. When I asked them before, so if they have their own accounts, they can go ahead and sign in with their own accounts if they want.
Okay.
Or what they can do is just join with nickname because you created the roster.
Yes.
So with that, all they need to do is just type in their nickname
Okay.
and then they're in.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, they're still designing here.
Yeah, so why don't we, if it's okay with you guys, we'll do 10 minutes of more designing, and then we'll stop or pause, and then we'll dive into Tinkercad then.
Okay. Thanks for your patience, Chris.
Oh no, thank you for your patience. I know this is it's difficult to do virtually sometimes, but
Yes.
yeah. Okay, if it's possible, do you think that we could pause our planning? That way we can dive into some Tinkercad. All right, so we're going to get started with some Tinkercad. If you have any questions, please let me know. So I'm going to share my iPad screen. So with Tinkercad, there's two ways to access. So there is an iPad app that you can use, and there's also a website that will work on most devices, like a computer or even an iPad. So if like the app's not working, you can always go to tinkercad.com and use that as well. All right, so in Tinkercad, once you're there, for the kids, what you'll want to do, so you're the librarians in the room, they've actually created a class where you're going to be saving your 3D design so that they can easily 3D print them. So when you launch the Tinkercad app, it's going to prompt you to log in here. So kids, what you want to do is you want to choose the green button that says students join a class. Okay. And then on the next screen, it's going to ask you to enter a code. So you're the librarians in the room have a code for you to get in the class. So they should have that written down for you. So at this time, if you haven't done so already, if you can enter that code and then give me a thumbs up once you're in the class.
I think I have all our students loaded up into their classes.
Okay.
They're starting to design. I set up activities for the different sections of the machines.
Okay. So you guys tell me, do you want me to give you a run through, like a tutorial of Tinkercad, or are we feeling pretty comfortable?
I think we could use some guidance. I don't think any of our students have used it before.
Okay. All right. It sounds like we're all in our classes though, and starting to design. So I'll skip over this part. So once you're in, all right, so I'm in my class. I'm going to create a new design. All right. So what I'll do now is I'll take you through kind of how I designed my my paddle here. Okay. And that should give you most of the skills that you need to be on your way with your designs. So brief overview. So if you never used Tinkercad, so kind of how this works. One way to think about this is if you remember like the old kids' toys, like the Magnetiles. And basically the gist with Magnetiles, right, is like you're combining simple shapes together to make something more complex, like a building or something like that. Tinkercad kind of works the same way. It is a 3D design app meant for beginners, people just getting started with 3D design. Okay. Now, if you've never done 3D design, you know, for your whole life, you've been doing 2D design like we just did with our planning. You've been sketching things out on paper. So it's a different experience when you 3D design. Okay. And it can be a little frustrating at times, and there's a learning curve to it. So I would say right off the bat, before we begin, like one thing to keep in mind is just be patient with yourself. Let yourself learn, let yourself make mistakes. That's all part of the experience when you do this. Okay. So a couple things here to get started. Number one, okay, I'm going to emphasize this kind of over and over again. When you design, one design per project, right? So you don't want to make all your 3D designs in one project, right? You can make as many projects as you want. So one design per project. And the reason for that, when it comes time to 3D print, if you have everything in one project, it's hard to what we call slice, basically prepare that design for the 3D printer if there's a whole bunch of different projects all tied together. Okay, so with what I'm going to demonstrate, I'm only going to design one thing, and that's our paddle. Okay, so if you can see my screen, what I'm doing is by default, you can see up here, Tinkercad gives your project like a kind of like a nonsense name. So first thing I'll have you do is change that name to that one thing that you're going to design. So in this case, I'm going to design my paddle. And that's what I'm going to name it up there. Okay. Again, remember, one design per project. Okay. So navigating the screen. And again, keep in mind, this is a 3D space, right? So I'm in the app, and basically I can use one finger and I can kind of move this plane around and view it. I can zoom in using two fingers. I can also zoom out again using two fingers. There's a box up here. Again, that's just another way to navigate the screen. If you ever get lost, okay, which will happen, like you will get lost in the 3D space. Over on the left-hand side, there is a home button that will kind of reorient you back to home. Okay, so that's kind of navigating the space. And again, be patient with yourself and take your time. All right, so let's start making I'm going to start making my paddle. And as I mentioned, basically the gist is you're combining some simple shapes together to make something more complex. Keep in mind, those shapes can be solid or they could be holes. Okay. So I'm going to start, if I'm making my paddle, I'm going to start with a cube shape like that. Okay. Now I could start molding this and I can start resizing it like this, like you can drag those buttons. However, you guys made very specific plans, right? So you took measurements, you made kind of like schematics with measurements on there. So we want to be precise with like the sizes that we want things here. So one thing I want to point out, so in the bottom right, where it says settings, if we click on that, this is kind of important too, because we need to know like what unit of measurement that we're looking at. By default, Tinkercad puts you into millimeters. So when we were planning, I did over here, like some of you were planning in metric, some of you were using like centimeters and millimeters, which is great. You can continue to do that, and you can design in Tinkercad using millimeters. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Some of you might have taken your measurements and you might have used inches, which is what I did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change from the default millimeters and I'm going to change to inches because that's what I used for my measurements. So now I'm going to close settings. And now basically all my measurements that I did just because I planned in inches. So now any measurements I put in here are going to be in inches because I changed that. Okay. So give me a thumbs up if you're okay with me so far.
Can you show again where you got into settings?
Yep, I can show that again. So on the screen, in the bottom right, there's settings. And then under units, you can, by default, that's going to be millimeters. But if you want to design in inches, you can switch that to inches, or you could design in millimeters if you want. Okay. Are we okay? All right, I got some thumbs up, so I'm going to move on. Okay, so now, as I pointed out before, like, I can drag and design to like change the shape of this, but again, we measured out some pretty precise dimensions here. So if you watch, rather than dragging out, you can see like when I select my object, there's these like white cubes like on the corners. So I can get very specific with my measurements with this. So if I click on one of these white cubes, so I'm going to do like the bottom right corner cube here. You can see like I can get specific, I could type in specific numbers for my measurements. So that length right now it's at like 2.691. Well, I want the length of my paddle. What I planned out was 5 inches. So I'm going to type in 5. Okay, and it's going to take care of it. It's going to take care of resizing it for me then. Now we can do the width here. So if I click on that same box, so the width of my paddle, I want it to be 1/4 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch. Now, the tricky thing is, if you're working with inches, you have to put that in as a decimal. So the decimal of 1/4 is 0.25. Okay, so now at this point, I have the length set. I have the width set. What I need to do now is kind of set the height. So for that, there's a white box like at the top. If I click on that, and I believe if I look at, yep, I had that set also at 1/4 of an inch. So that's going to be 0.25. Okay. So now I have one piece. Okay, so that's just one piece of my paddle set and ready to go. Okay. So at this point, now that I have that piece and the measurements are right, the measurements are what I want them to be. I'm going to do the second part of my paddle, which is going to be the part that I grab onto, right? The part, that tab for my fingers so that I can control it. And that's going to go on the end of it. Okay. So again, to make that part, I'm going to drag in a cube. And this time I'm going to look at my plans for that tab. Height-wise, that was 3/4 of an inch I made that. So that's 0.75 of an inch. Okay. Width-wise, I made it the same width. And that was 1/4 of an inch, so 0.25. And then the length, I set that as 1 inch, which is there. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I need to do two things with this. I need to place it where it goes at the end of the paddle. And then I need to group it with the other piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm going to slide it Okay, so one problem that I'm getting is that it's not snapping into place. So that's okay. Underneath settings where it says snap grid, I can make that a little bit more precise. There we go. Okay. So next thing I'm going to do is I want that to be combined. I want these two shapes to be combined together. Okay. And that's called grouping. So here's how I'm going to do this. So to group, you need two fingers. Okay. So if I tap on one shape, so I selected that finger tab that I just made. And then if I tap on the main part of the paddle, okay, that's going to select both of those shapes. Okay. And then up top, there's a button. It's like a square merged with a circle. I can select that, and that's going to group those two things together. Okay. And now that's like one shape now. So if I need to move this around, it's going to move like one object. Or if I need to resize it, it's going to resize together as one object. Okay. Can I do like a quick check-in? How are you guys doing? Any issues or questions so far? Okay. So if there's no questions, I'm going to keep going. This time I'm going to add that cylinder part. Okay, so I made the diameter 1 inch, but it needs to be the same height as the main part of the paddle, which was 0.25 inches or a quarter of an inch. Okay, and that I'm going to place there. So one trick that I can show you if you need to center anything. So if I select my cylinder and I select the main part of the paddle, there's actually a button here where I can like center things. Okay, so that's perfectly centered actually. And what I want to do, just like I did with the finger tab, I'm going to take this and I'm going to group it with the rest of my paddle. Okay, so this is taking shape now. It looks like a paddle, but I'm missing one thing. All right, so I need a way to fasten this to the board using the brass fastener. So I need a hole in the center of that cylinder that the brass fastener is going to go into. So any object that you have, so I'm going to pull in a cylinder. Any object that you pull in can either be a solid shape or it could be what's called a hole. So if I go up here where it says cylinder and I click on that button, it's kind of like a gray shade button. That turns this into a hole. So what holes do is they take bites and chunks out of solid shapes when you group. Okay. So I have my cylinder that's a hole. I want that hole to be a quarter of an inch, 1/4 of an inch all the way around, and that's where my brass fastener is going to go in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on one of those squares. Right now there's an inch diameter. I'm going to change that and make that 0.25. I'm going to do it on the other side. Okay, so now I have my hole. It's the right size. I need to put it in place. And you're going to notice like the hole is taller than the solid. That's good. I want that to be, but it's the right diameter. It's the right size width-wise. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this and center it in the middle of my cylinder there. And again, easy way to center something. I'm going to select my hole. I'm going to select the paddle. And then up top, there's this alignment button. And I'm going to use those circles, and that centers it right in the middle of that cylinder for me. Okay. Now you can't just leave it like that. So in order for that hole to take that bite out of the solid shape, you have to group the hole with a solid. Okay. So again, how we group. Okay. I'm going to select that hole. Then I'm going to select my solid shape, my paddle. And then that group button at the top, which is that square in that circle. Okay, and it takes like a minute or a couple seconds for that to take effect. But once you have that, that hole takes a bite out of the solid shape. So you can see now, my paddle is complete and ready to go. Okay, so I will stop sharing. So the rest of this time, I mean, it looks like all of you are working underway. I will be here. If you have any questions or want to see how to do something, or if you want me to go over a direction, I'm happy to do that. But other than that, this time is yours to design and to work.
Can you show us how you did the cylinder and that hole in the center again?
Absolutely. Let me share my screen. Okay, I'll just do two different shapes this time. So I'll just drag in a square to demonstrate, and then I'll drag in a cylinder. So any object that you drag in can either be a solid or a hole. So to make it into a hole, up top where it says cylinder, in this menu up here, you're going to see like by default that's a solid, but next to it there's like a gray icon. If you select that, that turns it into a hole. I want that to be taller than the object I'm going to group it with. And real quickly, I'm just going to change the dimensions of that hole. So if I want it to be 1/4 of an inch diameter, I'll change it like that. Now I'm going to move it. So let's say I want this centered in the square. So what I'm going to do is to center this, I'm going to tap on the cylinder, the hole, and then I'm going to tap on the square. And then in the menu, above this, there's that alignment one. It's like the line with the two squares. And this will enable me to center the hole if I want to do that. Okay. Then the next thing that you need to do in order for the hole to take a chunk out of a solid, it needs to be grouped with that solid shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that cylinder, then select the solid, and then I'm going to group it like that. Okay. Okay, so it's 11:45. Unless there's any questions, I'm going to jump off. We're good? Okay. Good luck in your creation, and then we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Hold on, one of the parents had a question.
Oh, I didn't know
Okay.
if you wanted to wait till that. Till the-
No, they've been doing what he told.
Okay,
So,
all right.
All right.
Does anyone have a
thanks, guys.
question?
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. All right, we'll see everyone tomorrow.
Okay.